Daniel, I woke up one day recently thinking, I wish I knew when I was 21 what I know today.
Welcome to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast, where world changing spiritual entrepreneurs come to deeply awaken the power within to bring forth their greatest purpose, while enjoying being in tune with all life and real wealth in all aspects of their lives. I'm your host, Daniel John Hanneman. And welcome everybody to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. I'm so grateful to be with you. I've got the most amazing guest today, Neale Donald Walsch. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here with you. How may I serve you?
I love that you asked that question. I remember that from the last time I was with you. So, wow. Well, I'm really wanting to be served through this book, that you just released. One of your, 40th some book? Uh, you've been busy writing, haven't you?
Well, 42, but who's counting?
Yeah, something like that, right? 40 some books. And yeah, obviously you're not. So, but letters to a young seeker. What a wonderful, wonderful gift to give to the world. I love you have these 21 inner awarenesses in the book that I really have questions about. I want to talk to you about. So, but first, let's talk about the impetus for this particular book. I thought it was interesting. You're like, these are like departing, I forgot how you put it, departing words from an elder kind of thing, teachings. So tell us more about your impetus for this particular book.
Well, Daniel, I woke up one day recently thinking, I wish I knew when I was 21 what I know today. And of
Hmm.
course, that's not an original thought. Many older people think thoughts like that. I wish I knew when I was younger, what I know today. But I thought, yeah, it's true for me. I do wish that I knew some things when I was 21 or even 31. Frankly, even 41, I would have settled. Because I didn't really become clear about some of the major issues of life until I was, 50 years old. And so I think I said something out loud like that in my home, and my darling wife said to me, well, why don't you put it into a book so that people who are 21 or 31 or 41 could at least benefit from what you've learned since you were that age. And I said, I've never thought about that. I guess I could do that. She said, yeah, do it. And then I said, would you be willing to put some of your poetry? I'm talking to my wife. She's an award-winning published poet. So would you be willing to add some of your poetry so that the book wouldn't come off like, preaching or, doctrines from an older guy who thinks he knows it all? Maybe it would add a little bit of a different kind of energy to the book. If you could find from your collection of poetry some works that relate directly to what I'm saying in the book. She said, I'd love to. So we came up with this idea to write a book, to produce a book together. And I decided on a format, Daniel. I thought, I'm going to create the book in a series of short, very short, 5 or 6 paragraph letters to a younger person. Just a letter that says, hey, had you thought about this particular point of view? And that just explains some information that I've learned through the years. And I have to say that most of the messages that I've included in the book were given to me in the experience that I called my conversations with God. Now, I know a lot of people think, that's kind of silly. Do I really think I had a conversation with God? But the answer is yes, I do think I had that kind of an experience. And I think we all do. I think that all people have conversations with the higher part of themselves where God resides, in my opinion. But they call it something else because people don't want to be ridiculed or marginalized. So nobody walks around saying, "Yeah, God told me this morning such and such." So we call it, women's intuition or a psychic hit or an epiphany. I had an epiphany this morning, or I had a brilliant insight in the shower stall. A brilliant idea came to me. But I called it exactly what I experienced it as being, conversations with God. And I put what I consider to be the 21 most important messages I received in that conversation, because the conversation, of course, was shared with the public in a series of books by that title.
Right.
And,
I've got them all right here.
yeah, so I put it in this book called Letters to a Young Seeker, and that's my 20-minute answer to your 30-second question.
No, that's good. That's what I thought. I was like looking at them thinking, yeah, these are probably like from those books. I didn't, yeah, so I didn't know that. I don't know if I saw that in the book, but like I just thought that in my mind. I thought, well, it's probably from the books. Um, so I wanted to dive in right into the material. I mean, I do just want to reemphasize because you've already did say it, but this is for people really of any age. This is with timeless wisdom for everybody, really. But it is like the idea of like, you're 82. You've you told us, right? Is like you told us in the brief that I got, and it's like, yeah, well, most of you are younger than me, right? So it's but yeah, you especially would like to catch those people earlier, but like you're never too late. Like I'm 56 now, and when you think about it from your perspective, you're like you're just getting started at 56, right? Like you're really,
Really?
really
I mean,
young. Yeah,
truly.
right.
Yeah,
So like that's what I
56
appreciate. You just
feel
because that's when you really took off, so to speak, with the books, I think, is in your 50s, right?
yes, exactly. And 56 feels very young to me. You know, when you're 82,
Yeah.
56 feels like he's still a child.
Right, right.
And everyone who knows you says you are acting like a child, so you must still be a child.
Right, right, exactly. We're all children, right? But yeah, I mean, because that gives me inspiration because I feel like, I've achieved a fair amount of whatever and, whatever spirit, whatever I achieved or whatever, but like, I feel like there's so much more, right? So like, I appreciate a book like this, to help me as well, for sure. So like the inner awareness of nothing has, number one, nothing has meaning save the meaning you give it. Um, so some people could really get twisted in their mental mind around this one, along with other ones. But so nothing has meaning. So I get it's on a spiritual level, but uh, how can that be true? How could it be true? Nothing has meaning. Of course, love has meaning, right? Everything has meaning.
No, no, wait a minute. The statement is not nothing has meaning. The statement is nothing has any meaning, save the meaning you give it.
You didn't say,
S-
yeah,
s-
yeah,
So, of course, everything has meaning,
right,
but
right.
nothing means anything in and of itself. The point that is being made in the book, I mean, this that was letter number two in Letters to a Young Seeker.
Hmm.
Letter number one was there's more going on here than meets the eye.
Hmm.
Letter number two was nothing has any meaning save the meaning you give it. And that helps me in my life, that helped me to contextualize why I was feeling the way I was feeling. Because you know what I noticed in my life, Daniel? I noticed that two people can have the same experience in life, but assign entirely different meanings to it. As an example, and this is when it really became clear to me, one of my wonderfully close relationships, I've had more than one marriage, I'm sorry to say, but that marriage ended, and I felt really terrible about it. To me, it meant that I had failed and we had not, done what we had hoped we would do. And it was a very sad moment in my life. But a guy down the street who I happen to know, we weren't close friends, but we were, neighbors. He indicated that he just lost his marriage he just ended, and he felt terrific. So we both had the same experience, a marriage ending in divorce, but he gave it a different meaning than I gave it in my life. So when God said to me, Neil, nothing has any meaning save the meaning you give it, I realized, oh, there's no such thing as an objective meaning. Even if people agree, we're still agreeing on what is our subjective experience. So that's important for a 21 or a 31 or even a 41-year-old person to know, because if nothing has any meaning save the meaning we give it, then we have the option of deciding what something means, what a particular event, what a circumstance, And let me explain, if I could, just briefly. I hate to give you another 25-minute answer to a 30-second question, but to make this practical, not just philosophical. What's practical about it is, if we have the option to decide what something means, then if we are attempting to do something, let's say we embark on a project in our life, whatever the project might be, whether it's painting the house or getting a new job or whatever the project might be, we embark on the project and we experience what we call failing. It didn't work out the way we thought it would work out. What does that mean? We get to decide. And that's what's important for a 21-year-old person to know. You get to decide. Is it important? What is the meaning of that so-called failure? And you know what? I've asked audiences, I've had an interesting experience, Daniel, because I've been invited to give speeches, in a lot of places. And I've asked my audiences, how many of you have experienced what you felt was what could be one of the worst things that ever happened to you in your life, only to decide 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years later that it was one of the best things that ever happened to you?
Right. Do you want to meditate and make money? Let it be simple. Let it be easy. Let it be fun. Go to yoursacredpurpose.com and get your free meditate, make money meditation today.
How many of you have had that experience? And 98% of the hands in the audience go up. So, I see. Now, the master is the one who decides that ahead of time, not after 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years. But when it's occurring, it may not be the worst thing that ever happened. I should look for, you know, every cloud has, I hate to be so trite, but every cloud has a silver lining. So what I've learned in my life, Daniel, is to look for the silver lining in what seemed to be a cloud, what seemed to be a failure. And I've discovered that most of my failures have been successes, including the relationship that didn't work, because
Wow.
it produced space for both my darling former partner, who's still a wonderful and always was a wonderful person. It created a space for both of us, for her and for me, to find another relationship. She's been in a wonderful 25-year relationship since then, and I've had some relationships since then as well, including an 18-year marriage to a different person. So guess what? So don't judge ahead of time. Nothing has any meaning, save the meaning we give it. Thank you for asking about that question, because that's a wonderful place for the book to start off.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, someone could say love is the greatest thing ever, or someone else could say it's the worst thing because I've been hurt so many times. All this, right? So like anything could be seen as the opposite, right? So yeah, I mean, going through these different ones that I was curious about, that kind of leads me naturally to inner awareness number six a little bit. And so the idea of like the minute you decide you want something, the opposite shows up, right? So I'd love to dig into that one a little bit. Um, so you say you want to be a millionaire, and all of a sudden, like everything starts falling apart financially, right? You see that happen with for people, right? So
Yeah,
why is that? If you were God, I would be like, why is that? I'd be
well,
curious.
if I could, let me make a statement so that people who are watching this particular program might really understand what letter number 6 tells a younger person. Specifically, the statement is, the moment you declare yourself to be anything, successful, abundant, happy, its exact opposite will appear in your awareness.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That is, we suddenly become aware that, oh, the exact opposite of what I'm calling forth in my own life is found probably all over the place in the contextual field in which I live. And this is called the law of opposites. You know what I've discovered, Daniel? We're taught about a lot of things, the law of gravity, the law of electrodynamic, all sorts of laws in the universe. But no one ever told me about the law of opposites until I had my conversations with God, in which God said, Neil, you have to understand something. You can't experience yourself as anything unless the opposite of what you want to experience exists in your reality. And I said to God, wait a minute, that can't be true. Really? God said, Neil, think about it. How tall are you? And I said, well, I'm 6 feet tall. God said, of course I know that, but I wanted to make sure you were understood what I'm trying to say to you. You're 6 feet tall. If you want to, what is it like? What is it like to be 6 feet tall? I said, I kind of enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being a 6 foot tall person. And God said to me, but what if every blade of grass, every tree, every house, every building, and every other person in the universe was precisely 6 feet tall? Then you couldn't experience what it's like being 6 feet tall. You could know that you were 6 feet tall, but you would have no way to experience what it feels like to be 6 feet tall because everything would be 6 feet tall. Therefore, if you really wanted to know what it's like to be 6 feet tall, you would actually pray for something, anything to show up in your universe that was other than 6 feet tall. Neil, this is called, God said to me, the law of opposites. And it's important to understand that because, if you want to experience yourself as being abundant, it's really important for you to gather what it's like to be abundant, and you wouldn't understand that unless you had an awareness of what it's like not to be abundant. And sure enough, Daniel, I remember when I made an affirmation. It was a kind of a big movement around 25 or 30 years ago, and the whole movement toward making affirmations. So I made an affirmation. I have all the money that I need. I am an abundant person. It was just an affirmation. It wasn't necessarily my lived experience every moment of my life, but it was my affirmation. Sure enough, that very day, I walked down the street in the city where I live, and there was an older gentleman sitting on the sidewalk, leaning up against a building. He looked kind of haggard. He looked like he hadn't had a shower in 6 weeks. But he did have a little basket in front of him. And there was a little cardboard sign in the basket that said, anything helps.
Hmm.
He was a street person. He had no money at all, except what was left in the basket by maybe a few generous passers-by. And I decided to be one of those generous passers-by. I reached into my pocket and I know I pulled out some folding money. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying what I did.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
dropped a little piece of folding money into his basket. And he said, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. And I kept on walking past him, but I realized, oh, now I know what it feels like to be abundant because I've encountered the opposite. And
Right.
in the absence of what it is you want to be, what you want to experience, it's not. It's not experienceable. So God said to me, let's use a metaphor, Neil. Supposing you want to be the light. When you walk into a room, you'd like to light up the space. You'd like to be, kind of like the lighthearted person. You'd like to be the light. Okay, so Neil wants to be the light. But if you're a candle in the sun, you're one of 50 billion kajillion other candles, which makes the sun so bright you can't even look directly at it. But you can't experience yourself as the light unless you place yourself where?
The dark.
in the darkness.
Hmm.
Therefore, God said, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are.
Mm. Yeah.
What a simple suggestion. What a simple idea. But I didn't someone tell me that when I was 21 or 31 or 40. Why did I have to wait until I was halfway through my adult life, 51 years old, before I was given such a simple piece of information?
Yeah. Yeah. Very beautiful.
So I've learned how to deal with the law of opposites. And when the opposite comes into my awareness, the opposite of what I wish to experience in my life, I bless it. And I move into a place of gratitude so that I could understand who I really am and what I totally choose to experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I find making a practice of looking at whatever's happening each day and giving thanks for it and seeing the blessing in it as soon as possible is an excellent practice because you're able to realize it is a blessing, faster and faster. So you don't have to get caught up in all the other ideas that we could have about a situation.
And Daniel, the fastest way to see it as a blessing is to be the one who blesses it,
Mm.
which
Mm.
is why we were told by all the great masters through the centuries, bless, bless, bless that which is opposes you, and be a light unto the darkness. You know, and we were given specific examples. If a man slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer him your left. And if a man steals your coat, give him your shirt as well. And if a man demands that you walk 1 mile with him, go with him twain.
Mm.
Bless those who would do you evil, and bless every situation that arises with which you disagree. Find a way to disagree agreeably and watch your whole life change.
Mm.
That's the kind of advice I've placed in this book, Letters to a Young Seeker, because I wish someone had told me that when I was 21.
Hmm. Right.
Better
Right.
late than never.
But it is so t tough, right? People are in such tough situations they run into and that they perceive in their life, even if it's perception, but like they run into these conflicts and I know I do and you do. You want to do your best, but sometimes you get out of control, like your emotions just get the best of you for a moment, right? You're like,
Well,
ah.
and sometimes until we understand what is occurring and
Hmm.
why and how we can use it to create the outcome we wish to experience. I don't know whether you're aware of it, Daniel, but I spent a year of my life living on the sidewalk.
I think I do remember that. Yeah.
And not as an experiment. I wasn't trying to see how it would be. I had no choice. I was out of work for an extended period of time. I couldn't find a job. Finally, I ran out of money. I couldn't pay the rent. Finally, the landlord, where I was living, said, "I'm sorry, I have to ask you to leave. I've given you 3 months, but I can't go any further without any income." And he evicted me, and I wound up living on the street. But even, I thought, okay, I can do this for 2 or 3 weeks. I can find a way.
Yeah.
Those 3 weeks wound up being 1 year
Wow.
before I finally found a little part-time job somewhere where I could afford a little garage top, a little flat on top of somebody's garage. At least I got out of the weather, out of the rain, out of the cold. And I had a little part-time job. I didn't have to go from person to person asking if they could maybe spare. I turned into that person on the street that I had seen years earlier. I
Hmm.
became that person. asking passers-by, could you spare anything? I remember, I got to share with you a little story, Daniel. I remember one person said to me, well, I don't have that much money on me right now. I just put all my money into the bank. I got some loose change in my pocket. I could give you a couple of quarters, but what good is that going to do you? And I can recall saying to him, my friend, if everybody that I asked today offered me a couple of quarters, I might be able to eat something by 4:30. Please, whatever you've got to spare. And he reached into his pocket and he gave me a couple of quarters.
Hmm.
And I learned even when I was on the street for a year how little I actually need in
Hmm.
order to be happy. How much I desire is one thing, but how much I need is another thing altogether. So I learned never to require what
Right.
I desire, which is letter number 19 in
Right.
Letters to a Young Seeker. Don't
Hmm.
require what you desire, which has become my favorite little poem.
Wow, yeah, I saw that one. I'm like, that, I mean, that makes sense. I know the first idea comes to me, the Buddha's in the back and everything, and non-attachment and all that. So how are we to be with our desires? Some people say indulge in them and, let them flow or whatever, and other people are don't even mess around with desires. And
Well,
so,
I would never say don't have any desires. Desire is the beginning of creation.
hmm
So I would never say don't have any desires. I would simply say what I've already said. Don't require
hmm
what you desire.
hmm
And I learned that in the most difficult circumstances when I was with the lady of my dreams and we were in a romantic moment, call it a sexual experience, if you please. And I learned very quickly, don't require what you desire. Because if you require what you desire, your partner in the encounter is going to say, are you kidding me? Game over.
right.
And so I learned that all of life is a sexual experience. I mean, SEX is an acronym, synergistic energy exchange.
Hmm.
All of life is a synergistic energy exchange. So I've learned to stop requiring what I've been desiring. But I would never say give up your desires.
hmm
Allow yourself to desire what it is you desire, but allow yourself to be okay if it doesn't turn out that way.
hmm hmm Right. Yeah, it takes
Never
away the
demand it and
stickiness.
never demand it from anybody else, whether it's your boss at work or the person that you're intimate with or the man across the street. I just learned not to demand what I desire from life, much less from anybody else in particular. But I wish I knew that when I was 21, because, I have to tell you, when I was a younger man, 21, 31, I actually did actually emotionally demand what I wanted. I demanded a raise from my boss. I can remember the day when I said, give me a raise or I quit. He said, looks like you're out of here. Sorry to lose you. And I can remember demanding certain other things from life as well.
Mhm.
So I stopped demanding.
Mhm. Yeah. And what did that do for you? Not saying I have to have it, you better give it to me. What did that do for you
It
personally?
freed me up. It freed me up personally.
hmm
It gave me the inner experience of joy and serenity and peace.
hmm
I no longer had to carry forward the feeling of wanting something that I can't have or will probably not get.
hmm hmm
So it freed me. It gave me the freedom to enjoy fully what I was receiving from life, which I came to experience turned out to be plenty.
Mhm. There's so much greatness to every moment. I mean, without needing anything, right? I mean, that's what it says to me, like in a way, like you might have your preferences or whatever you say, you know, those type of things, but like it's a sense of, yeah, that freedom of just, which I like because a lot of times my mind wants to be like, I'm gonna get that done, I'm gonna have that, and that is a lot of tension though that builds up sometimes for sure.
And I let go of all that tension. I have no tension anymore.
Mm.
But someone could look at me and say, well, it's easy for you to say. I mean, you're 82 and you've gone through all of it. And I say, yeah, but you know what? I think it's possible to live this way when you're not only 82, but 22
Hmm.
or 32 or 42. You don't
Mm.
have to wait until you've got gray hair all over the place in order to live this way. You simply have to come to a new understanding about life and how it works best.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, one of the things too you talked about, there's a number of things here, but you talk about where emotions was a big one and a number of them. You know, emotions, the power of emotions, number 10. Uh, but
Yeah,
emotions are the most powerful creative tool. You can say the whole phrase, but that really struck me because there's so much old school stuff of like your thoughts are that would create everything and you know that sort of thing. But you point more to emotion, it seems to me.
yes, that's exactly what I was told in my conversations with God. This again, this whole movement that took place a few years ago that told us that your thoughts create your reality. So but I'm not saying your thoughts don't have a role to play, but when thoughts turn into emotions, when thoughts become energy in motion, that's when you begin creating in a
Mhm.
very powerful way the reality that you're going to experience. So I've learned to pay attention not just to my thoughts, but more importantly, to what emotions I am projecting, what energy that I am projecting into the universe as a result of the thoughts that I'm thinking. Because you can change your mind almost instantly about anything. You can actually tell your mind, stop thinking that way. You know,
Right.
think more positively or whatever. But once your thoughts turn into expressed emotions, it's difficult to change that projection, especially because the emotions that you're experiencing are being projected outward into the universe around you. That's the whole point of what
Hmm.
an emotion is. It's E equals motion, energy in motion. So I have become very careful in the last 30 to 35 years of my life. I've become very careful and very cognizant, very much aware of the emotions that I am projecting into the universe.
Yeah.
If I think a thought that might be negative, I tell myself, don't put that into an emotion. That doesn't mean you can't speak your truth, but you can speak your truth to other people in a way which is not necessarily emotionally aggressive or attacking, making someone else wrong.
Right.
So I've learned, you know what, one of the biggest lessons of my life, Daniel, I've learned to stop making people wrong, including, the person I'm living with. When you live with somebody, you have a life partner, a spouse, or even if they're not necessarily someone you're married to, but you have a life partner. If you're sharing life with someone 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 24/7, you're going to have disagreements. You're going to have moments when they have a point of view that's not shared by you. Could be about something unimportant, like what do you want to do to watch what do you want to watch on TV tonight, or something very important. Like, what are we going to spend that $5,000 that we just got? What are we going to spend it on? What? You want to fix the back gate? That's, I mean, really? So I've learned to stop making people wrong when they hold a point of view that's different from my own.
Mm,
I've learned to say instead, you know, we have different ideas about this. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that your idea is in any way wrong. It's simply
mm,
different from mine.
mhm,
And so I wonder if we can agree to disagree agreeably.
mhm, mhm. Right.
And that's what I've come to in my life. And do I wish I had come to that when I was 35 and not 65? Yeah. Daniel, I could have saved a couple of marriages that way.
Yeah.
And I can think of at least one job that I would have kept that I really liked that I've lost because I made my boss wrong. And my boss said, I'm sorry you feel that way. This is your last week. Turn in your papers, turn in your material at your desk because you're no longer working with us. And I'm like,
Mm,
oh my God, what have I done here? I had to go home and tell my family I lost my job. So it took me a while to find another job. So I've learned. I've
mm,
learned some things, and that's what I put in the book, Letters to a Young Seeker.
mhm.
Thank you for asking me all about it. I appreciate you giving me the chance to share.
I love this. I'm soaking it in. Number 16, inner awareness talks about understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind
In
of the master. So I love that. I just used that in another podcast and I referenced that it was in your book and in a solo podcast I did. And that's so true, isn't it? The way I hear that anyway, when I process it, is once you understand, there's no need to feel like you have to so-called forgive, right? I mean, it's just, it's, you know what I mean? It's just, it just, you understand, right? Once you understand, you come to peace. Like usually that's what happens when people get all riled up, they get angry or they have hate or just anger or frustration with someone. Once they really have an understanding about the situation, then they're like, oh, I feel better now. I feel more at peace with it.
or even about understanding how a person could have acted the way they acted. I get invited to talk to spiritual groups every so often. Yeah, I get invited to talk at temples and synagogues and churches. And I love it because I say to the audience, I've come here today to tell you that God will never forgive you for anything. And the place goes crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, eyes in the front row cross. I mean, people get up and walk out. Oh no, another one of these new age freakos.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
have to explain to them, wait a minute. You may want to disagree with me, but at least let me explain. So, maybe they'll sit back down. Okay, explain yourself. I said, God will never forgive you for anything because you cannot, if God is the most powerful being in the universe, and I believe that God is, there's no way that we could hurt, injure, damage, frustrate, or anger God in any way. Any more than a 2-year-old child could hurt your feelings irreparably by saying something at the dinner table that he probably shouldn't have said.
Hmm.
No. So, you don't turn to a 2-year-old child and say, it's okay, sweetheart, Grandpa forgives you. Because Grandpa understands that forgiveness is not part of the equation.
Yeah.
Grandpa understands how a 2-year-old could have said something like that.
Right.
Because they're acting like a 2-year-old.
Right.
They haven't really matured sufficiently to not say those kinds of things at the dinner table.
Hmm.
And God understands that all of us on this planet are acting like 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
We have a population on this planet acting like 2-year-olds. I'm not sure that most people know this, but Daniel, we think that the best way to solve our problems is through violence, verbal violence, and in many cases, physical violence. We've had armed conflict on this planet for all but 5% of recorded history. When are we going to grow up? What's stopping us from understanding who we really are, why we're really here, and what the point of life really is, and how we can achieve what we've come here to achieve without hurting someone else in the process?
Hmm.
So that's why I wrote Letters to a Young Seeker. And that's why I was told, because I was given this information in my conversation with God. She said, Neale, understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. So when someone comes to me and says to me, just can't forgive them. I'm sorry, I just can't forgive them. I go, really? Can you understand why they would have done or said what they said?
Hmm.
And sometimes the person across the room will say, well, yeah, I can understand. I mean, his father did the same thing to him, and he probably just thought or they'll, when they think about it for a minute, they often understand even why a person could have said what they said. Well, they're probably scared or they're frustrated or upset. And I go, have you ever said anything, by the way, in your life that you wish you had never said? And that person across the room will say, well, yeah, once or twice I probably have said something I wish I hadn't said. I go, I see. I see. So when you understand how another person could have done or said such a thing, then you will realize that understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. Because even when you say to another person, it's okay, I forgive you, that makes that person feel guilty because it sends that person
Right.
a
Yeah.
message that they did something that's, requires forgiveness.
Right.
But when we say to the other person, I'm not going to say that I agree with what you did. I'm not going to say that I condone it or hope that it's repeated. But I have to say this much. I understand how you could feel that way.
Hmm.
I understand how you could feel that way.
Right.
And the other person feels like, thank you for telling me that. Even if you don't agree with me, it,
Right.
it feels good over here.
I think most people, if they're honest, like deep down inside, they don't know if they completely believe in what they're all riled up about these days. Anyway, like I believe in this, and they'll tell you no matter what they believe in it, maybe one at their conscious level, but underneath, part of them realizes they don't know. They don't know sometimes, and that's how I see it anyway. And so just having that understanding that nobody really has a true grasp of what's ultimate reality, like Byron Katie, right? Like, can you absolutely know what's true? Is her magical question. Everybody has to say, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
we're
really
making it all up.
liberating, is
We're
realize we
making
don't
it
know.
we're making it all up as we go
Right,
along.
right.
Let me, so if somebody's watching this program, they might say, come on, come on, come on. There are certain absolute truths. I mean, come on, Neil.
Hmm.
And Daniel, you're even crazier than Neil.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
but I give them an example. I say, when I was a young man, I can recall this vividly, by the way. I was 22 or 23. And I was told at that time by my society, my whole culture, everybody around me, not just my parents, but my whole culture. The thinking when I was 22, this is, of course, quite a few years ago, is more than a half century ago. But a half century ago, I was told to live with a woman without being married, to have intimate relationships with that woman, and to share a household with her without being married was wrong. It was totally not okay. Neale, you can't just move in with her. Come on. You're embarrassing the whole family here.
Mm,
What's the matter with your moral structure? Where did you learn that you can just do that? Because you,
mm,
but you know what's interesting? In the intervening 50 years, people started saying, before you actually make a vow to marry somebody, maybe you should spend some time cohabitating with them for a while and see and it was actually recommended that we indulge or engage in a behavior that we were told 50 years earlier was immoral.
mhm, yeah,
So when I count the number of things that we've changed our mind about as a society
mhm,
that we once thought was right or wrong, and we've changed our mind one way or the other
mhm,
through a process called evolution. Okay, so I've learned then a lot about this business called life
mhm,
and a lot about, making people right and wrong. There's no such thing as absolute right and wrong. Letter number 17
mhm,
in Letters to a Young Seeker. There's no such thing as absolute right and wrong. There's only what you are currently saying is right or wrong. And even you may change your own mind in another 3 years. So be careful when you start speaking in absolutes.
right. Yeah. I'll never do this, or I always this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. 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 I think that's a great habit, great way of approaching things is to avoid those kind of statements.
Avoid absolutes.
Yeah, absolutely only. Um, so yeah, that was one I was going to get to. So we already got to number 17, letter 17. Now you talk about we're a creator of our own reality, but you also talk about there's co-creation and inner awareness, I believe, number 13. And within that, you talk about it. So Neil, I have to have some fun with that one. So what is it? Are we the creator of our reality or are we co-creators?
Yes.
Yes, I figured you'd say that.
Yeah. The answer is yes to both questions. Letter number 13 in the book Letters to a Young Seeker tells us that we are all one. And that's important for us to really understand. It was new information for me. I wish I had known, again, I wish I had understood that philosophically and functionally when I was a younger person. But now I've come to realize in my life that what I send out to the next person comes back to me. What goes around comes around.
Mhm,
What moves through me sticks to me,
mhm,
which is an interesting phenomenon. And God said to me, Neil, if you're not careful, you will realize that whether it's positive energy you're sending out or negative energy you're sending out, it's going to come back to you in like kind for a very important reason. There's only one of us in the room. I said, no, I don't understand. God said, hold up your hand. I said, okay. How many fingers do you have? I said, I got 5 fingers. God said, are they identical? I said, no, they're not identical. They
mhm,
all look differently and they behave differently and they have different functions.
mhm,
But God said, but they are all one with your hand.
mhm.
They're not separate from your hand, and your hand is not separate from your body. So, Neil, consider the possibility that you are all fingers on the hands of God. And when I say to you, we are all one, I'm not saying we are all identical. I'm saying we are simply inseparable. We are simply individual expressions of the self same energy, like waves on the ocean. There are no two waves that behave precisely and exactly alike, but they all arise from the same source and recede back into the same source because we are all one, not identical, but inseparable. And were we to treat each other that way, instead of the way we are treating each other on this planet today, were we to treat each other as they were one with us,
Mm.
obviously the world would change for the better overnight.
So let's get into the mud
And
a
we,
little
we were
bit on
given
that
we were
one.
given we were given this advice.
Yeah,
There was a guy who walked around here somewhere around 2,000 years ago who actually said,
yeah.
"Try this, try it, try this. How about how about you do unto others as you would have it done unto you?"
Hmm. Yeah,
Because it is being done unto you.
right, right.
Because what you do with and for another, or fail to do with and for another, you do or fail to do for yourself, for the reason that we are all one.
Hmm.
It's so simple, Daniel. It's so simple.
Wasn't it? That's the thing. A lot of these things are so simple, but the mind of complexity has other ideas about it. How can that be true? Is always kind of the idea, right? Do unto others. I mean, so yeah. Where's an area where people are not doing unto others as they would want done unto themselves? Where's an area you see that commonly happening for younger people these days, where you see that the people are getting all jammed up? I see it as like with social media, right, and things like that. People are gonna attack others, and
Yeah, verbal attack,
yeah,
and that creates uh, the biggest problem in the world today, which is separation. I've seen more alienation in the world in the past 15 years than I did in the first 45 years of my adult life.
mm-hmm.
We always had disagreements, but not at the level that we're seeing now. But now
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing people that make each other so wrong because they have a different point of view, a different religion, a different economic status, even maybe even a different gender, a different sex, for heaven's sake, or a different sexual orientation. And we're making people all wrong for that because they're not like us. And so we've created alienation, which has produced separation. And that's extraordinarily sad. It's a sign of our lack of sufficient evolution on this planet. However, we now have a chance to change that. We can create critical mass. We have the ability that we did not have even 25 or 30 years ago to create critical mass around ideas that can change our planet for the better forever. For instance, what we're doing right here, this
Mm-hmm.
very this very program that you're now doing would not have been possible 25 years ago. We simply wouldn't have thought we could actually get on the internet and produce a program that could be watched by hundreds or thousands of people all over the world. And so we have an opportunity to create critical mass around the thoughts and the ideas that can change humanity's experience for the better. That's why I wrote Letters to a Young Seeker, to see if we can't create critical mass before it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Can we find a way to love each other the way God loves us, with pure love,
Hmm.
love that needs, expects, requires, and of course demands nothing in return. Most people can't even turn to the person on the pillow next to them and say, I love you without any need, expectation, requirement, or demand. I need nothing in return. I need nothing in return because I don't love you as a way to make my life enriched. I love you because of what I see across the room.
Hmm.
I love you because of who you are, whether I get any of it or not. I love you because of what I see across the room. Or, as I've learned to say to my wonderful life partner, to my wonderful spouse, I've been married now to the same person for 18 years, which for me is a record because I finally figured out, how to do this.
Right.
But now I can turn to her and say, please remember these three words that I use after the words I love you. I love you no matter what. I love you no matter. That's what God says to us. Now, can we believe in a God like that? When I was told that by God, Neale, I love you no matter what. I said, God, you sound too good to be true.
Yeah.
And God replied, Neale, if God can't be too good to be true, who can?
Right.
So think your highest and best thought about God. And then think your highest and best thought about yourself. And then think your highest and best thought about everyone whose life you touch. And watch your life change for the better forever. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this.
Yeah, you're right. Everybody should be judging each other and all that good We might find that out later, right? But I think, yeah, I think about that. That is a great, great thought. Like that God is even beyond, the experience of people, yeah, who go on the other side, right? They're like, oh, it's beyond anything you could ever imagine, right? It's beyond anything you could imagine, touching into the deepest reality of life, as far as I know, anyway. That is beyond what you could ever imagine. So no matter how high you could think, it's even beyond that. That's really awakening. That's really powerful.
Nothing but pure love.
Mm, mhm,
I love you no matter what.
mm.
That's what God says to us.
Right.
Now, I was taught by my religion as a child. No, no, you don't understand. I love you only if you belong to the right religion. Only if you do the things that I'm telling you to do. Only if you never do any of the things that I'm telling you not to do. I want to share a little story with you, Daniel. This is kind of a sad story from my childhood, but I remember this vividly to this very day. I was 9 years old. I was in the third grade, and I was attending a Catholic school. I'm not a Catholic basher. I'm not trying to make the Catholic faith wrong, because most of the world's religions share certain stories about God. That God is judgmental, condemning, punishing, and so forth. Not just this particular faith. But I
Mhm.
remember that this particular day, the priest, our parish priest had come in. He came in once a week to teach the children catechism, which is the the rules and the regulations of the Catholic Church. And he was talking this day about mortal sin and venial sin and so forth. And I said, I raised my little 9-year-old hand. I can remember this to this day. Father, could you give me an example of what a mortal sin would be? Because the priest was explaining that a mortal sin is a sin that God will not confess. Will not forgive. If you die with a mortal sin on your soul that hasn't been confessed and hasn't been forgiven by a priest in a confessional, if you die with that mortal sin on your soul, you go straight to hell. I said, okay, well, God, Father, tell me what a mortal sin. Give me an example. I thought, sure, he was going to tell me a murder or maybe stealing someone's life savings or whatever. So he said, oh yeah, I can give you an example of mortal sin. Missing mass on Sunday without a good excuse. I said, I'm sorry. If I miss church 1 week of my life, that's a mortal sin? And the priest said, yes, my son. And my mind went crazy, Daniel, because that was the very week. And I was going to church, of course, every Sunday of my life. I was a 9-year-old Catholic boy. I was an altar boy. I didn't, but one particular Sunday, I was the right fielder of our playground softball team, and we were playing a big game that Sunday morning on the playground for the citywide championship. And the coach said, "You're not going to miss the game, right? We need you out there in right field." I said, "Oh, okay, I can miss church one Sunday,
Right.
so or I can make it up in some way." But now I'm being told that Wednesday, 2 days later, 3 days later, I'm being told this is a mortal sin. You got to go to confession and confess it and have it forgiven. I'm We didn't have confession in our church except 1 week. Well, I mean, 1 day a week, every Saturday. We had confessions from like 1 o'clock to 4. You couldn't go to confession whenever you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I realized I have to make it from Wednesday to Saturday.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I'm 9 years old, so I'm putting the data together. What if I get hit by a car?
Right. Right.
What if I get hit by a car on the way to church? So I asked the priest, I said, Father, I missed Mass on Sunday last week without a good excuse. I went and played baseball. What if I get hit by a car? What if I die before I go to confession? Will I still go to hell? And the priest said, I'm sorry, my son. Yes, you will.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it.
No, it's true. It's a true story. And
Oh, that's
Any Catholic will tell
wow.
you that to this day, because I wanted to check it out a few years ago, is this still the teaching that if you miss church one Sunday in your life without a good excuse, I mean, if you have to work to support your family, fair enough. Or if you're caring for a sick parent, okay. But if you don't have a good excuse, you may not miss Mass. That's the law of the church and the rule of God.
Wow.
By the way, forget about the larger rule. If you're not a Christian, you're not going to heaven anyway, even if you go to even if you go to synagogue or to temple every week of your life. It
Right.
doesn't matter because you belong to the wrong
Wrong one.
religion.
Wrong one. Yeah.
So God says to billions of Muslims and billions of you know, Jews and billions of Hindus, sorry, I know you believe in God, but you chose the wrong religion.
Right. I know those are things I would think about, growing up all the time. I mean, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
No, it didn't make sense for an all-loving God. It
Right.
only makes sense if you believe in a God who is judgmental, condemning, and punishing,
Right.
which is why we, as human beings, have decided it's okay to be judgmental, condemning, and punishing, because what's good enough for God should be good enough for us. So we imitate what we understand to be God's behavior.
Hmm.
So, by the way, you better make sure that this particular podcast is seen by hundreds of people, or you're going to be in deep trouble.
That's definitely gonna be a hot mess, right? Absolutely. I know. I'll be condemned big time.
I'm just
Wow.
imitating the God as I understand him to be.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Probably have before a long time ago. I hadn't thought of that recently, a long time, if ever. Like the imitation of what we believe the way God is. Like even if you don't think you believe that way now, but like it's impressed again into the subconscious mind, right? Into our consciousness. Like this idea, well, there's a judging God there anyway, and like that's what we were
So
grown
there
up
are
with.
certain religions that teach if you would be offending God if you don't wear certain clothing,
Right.
or if you eat certain foods that you're not supposed to eat.
Mm, yeah.
I mean, there are religions that teach it's not okay to eat certain kind of food.
Mm,
Not that it's not healthy,
mm,
that God says it's against the law of divinity.
mm-hmm,
I mean, really?
mm-hmm. Right. Right.
So there are 4,000 religions on the face of the earth right now, not since the beginning of time. Check it out. There are 4,223 religions being practiced now on the planet. And the majority of those religions teach of a God who is judgmental, condemning, and punishing. Loving for sure, but you have to obey God's commands or you're in big trouble.
Right.
But I believe in a God who says, sweetheart, I love you no matter what.
Mm.
My God says to me, there's no such place as hell. There is no such place as hell. Even if you have done things that you now regret or that you would have called totally not okay, even then you're welcome here because you have a chance to decide again how you want to experience who you really are. And you can reincarnate and go back for another life
Yeah.
and do it in a different way. That's how perfect the system is. It even provides a way for you to correct your own worst mistakes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could, of course, be wrong about all of this, but if I am wrong, I guess I'll be in hell. But it's like, I guess it's like it's been said by someone famous. All the interesting people are there anyway. All the interesting people are in hell anyway. So at
Yeah,
least
they're all
you,
the interesting people anyway, right? Well, yeah. I mean, no, who knows what's right or wrong, right? So who knows what the absolute right or wrong is? Someone said that one time. So it was said somewhere. But yeah, I mean, but it does, yeah, it's always not made sense. I was brought up Lutheran, but I was also told by my parents they believed in an unconditional loving God at the same time. So
oh, good. Oh, I'm so
yeah,
glad.
yeah, yeah. So that was a gift I did get, growing up.
Oh, nice. Aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky?
I had no idea you were an altar boy, growing up, and it was that deep. I knew you were a Catholic background, but I didn't realize how deep it went. So that makes a lot of sense. The passion and energy you have around that, the messages people are getting and from those backgrounds, as lovely as they are in other ways, right? There's a lot of beauty in all these a lot of the different religions, right? There's a lot of beauty in it too, but there's also this whole other side that's just wild and very,
There's great wisdom in the world's religions. I'm not anti-religious. I
right,
just think that religions don't have all the answers. I think that it's possible that there's something we don't fully understand
right.
about God and about life, the understanding of which would change everything.
Absolutely. Well, I think people should take advantage of getting the book if they want to learn more about the golden nuggets, like some of the biggest golden nuggets you picked out just for them to put in this book from your conversations with God. So, letters to a young seeker. And is there any best way to get the book, or is it just find it wherever you can?
Well, it's available from virtually every online bookstore.
Right, right.
You just go to any online bookstore that it pleases you to patronize and type in letters to a young seeker, and it'll come up and you can order it. And it'll be delivered right to your house. It's a very thin little book. It's not a big thick book. You don't have to
Yeah,
worry about it. It's a very easy read. You can read it in an hour and a half from start to finish.
yeah, I read it even faster than that. I got to learn to read fast with podcasts. So, but yeah, I really appreciated it a lot, and I like it that it's a quicker read too, because it, because it speaks a lot. You know, the what's in it speaks a lot. You don't have to put a lot of words behind it necessarily, unless you got one of those minds. You're like, no, I need to understand more. And maybe you should form a study group or something, or something like that, or meditate on it, right? So, anyway, I really appreciate everything you shared. Very precious and always so precious to have you on the show, Neale, and deeply, deeply. So grateful for you. I have your books here. You know, one of them's up pretty prominently in my office because I knew you're coming on the show again, and I it was one of the first spiritual type of books I really started getting into when I first got into, quote unquote spirituality. It was one of the first ones, and we did have a study group and all that stuff at that time on conversations with God, and it was really powerful, and it's still very powerful. I haven't reread it in a long time, but maybe I will now. We'll see.
Thank you for having me on the program, my friend. Good to see you again.
Likewise. And to all our audience, keep on tuning in. We'll keep on rocking it here at Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Till next time. For listening to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast, stay tuned for our next upcoming new episodes each Wednesday and Saturday. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review to help us to serve you best. As a reminder, you can get your free Meditate and Make Money meditation at www.yoursacredpurpose.com to rock your sacred purpose. Goodbye for now, everybody.